Welcome to our Atlanta Jewish Film Festival discussion of the film Persian Lessons. I'm Bob Bahr with the Center for Media and the Moving Image. My guest is Vadim Perelman, director of Persian Lessons, and this is an international production done in Belarus, but from a script by the Russian screenwriter Ilya Zofin, based on a German novella whose English title is The Invention of a Language by Wolfgang Kohlhaas. Well, welcome to the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival. How did this project originate?
Well, it originated by a Russian producer, Timur Bekmambetov, offering me, our kind of a partnership to work on a few projects, and he gave me the projects that he had kind of in the desk, and one of them was Persian Lessons, and I immediately responded to it and really took to it.
And what was there about this project that interested you?
Well, I think, me being Jewish and growing up in Ukraine, which was directly affected by the Holocaust, and I think the subject matter was very much close to the heart, and also I loved the premise. I loved the script. I thought it was a wonderful metaphorical adventure, shall we say?
And what was your I think your family had some connection with the Holocaust. Tell me about that.
Well, it was quite kind of not direct, but my grandmother in June, the end of June 1941, she evacuated from Kiev, from the city where we were. And she was 9 months pregnant, and she had a 5-year-old son at that time. And she was 9 months pregnant with my mother. And she gave birth to my mother on a train, in a cattle car, literally in one of those, cargo cars that on the floor to my mother. In process of escaping the Germans, and Germans took the city right after that, and Kiev, and occupied it. Then of course destroyed all the Jews in the city in Bahr, which is the famous the biggest single day massacre in the history of World War II, history of the Holocaust.
Yeah, one of the great strengths of this film are the exceptional performances that you've gotten from these two actors, the Argentine actor Noel Perez Bascajar as the Jewish inmate, Giles Kramer, and the German actor Lars Eidinger as the German SS officer Klaus Koch. Even if some of the situations are hard to accept at times, the actors have created very believable characters. How were you able to get those performances?
Well, I have a bit of a theory, is that I don't get performances from the actors. People always ask, how do you, such strong performances, such incredible work, how do you do this? I really don't. I think 90% of my work, 90% of my success with the actors relies on casting. You get the right people, and you trust them, and then you simply hand over the role to them. And if they're really good actors, great actors, which is something you made sure of in the casting process, they just do it. They do it without your help. I mean, I'm always there for questions, for support even. But great actors don't need direction, I don't feel.
And were these actors in mind when you were pulling this project together, or did they just happen to pop up
No,
at the right time?
it was a casting process, a very, very diligent, very exacting casting process that I always go through. It usually it takes a long time, and I see probably 100 candidates for every role, and narrow it down and narrow it down and narrow it down until, until I'm perfect. And sometimes I'm even in doubt about two people, which one, this one or this one, and I go with my gut on that one. And then after that, it's kind of no, I wouldn't say an autopilot, but after that, it's a pleasure just to watch, because kind of gratify yourself that you made the right choice, when they're up there on the screen.
Sure. Well, in Persian lessons, the Jewish character invents a language to deceive the SS officer that the officer's learning Farsi. How did you go about inventing this language, which is really spoken right up to the last moment of the film?
Yeah, many people actually remember phrases and words from after watching the film, and we obviously needed to make up a language, so I went to a linguist at Moscow State University, quite a learned fellow, and gave him the very desirable task for every linguist to make up a new language, which to him was Christmas. And so he did, and I gave him the parameters. I said, that I wanted it to be Eastern sounding with the ch and the sounds, and obviously I wanted to stick to a script. And then I also gave him a list of names, and the names were, and every name used in the film when you see it is really the real name of a Holocaust victim. I went to the archives and to the lists and used the real names for this language. So he took that as a basis for it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course that's how Giles the Jew remembers the words. And this idea that memory plays such an important role in this film, and this isn't the first film that you've made where memory plays an important role. What is it about memory that you find so fascinating?
Well, it depends what you mean by memory. If you mean by a legacy or just simple remembering things, that's what.
I think what I mean probably is the complex nature of memory. What is there about the complex nature of memory that you find so interesting and such an aid to telling your stories?
Well, I think quite often memory is what gets us by in life. It's something that there is a. We don't go to school to learn quadratic equations, because they really can't help us much in our future adult lives. We go to school to exercise our mind, I think, and I think in different ways, and I think that's what the value of education is, and I think that's where memory comes in and helps you with life in general.
Yeah. Did you find yourself with memories as you made this film? Did you explore your own memories as you were making this film?
Well, after the fact, I can't remember. It was a critic, I think, and I was doing an interview for a magazine or a newspaper, and he asked me, what's personal about this film? No, apart from your question of the Holocaust and all that. Well, what was your door in? Because all my films previous to that were somehow connected to my life, which has been quite illustrious. And I realized that as an immigrant from Ukraine at 14 years old, 15 is when I got to Canada, I didn't know a word of English, and so I could reinvent myself. And by learning a language and by applying this language to this new persona of me, and which is in a way what Gilles does in Persian lessons. He reinvents a new persona of himself, and so I was in a way also an imposter, as an immigrant in the new country, and it was also survival, not quite with the same ramifications, of course, as Gilles, but it was also in a way for me to survive in a new place, in a new and potentially dangerous place.
Yeah. Well, the German officer is a complex person as well. He's a murderous character, but he also has a love of poetry and music and good food, and perhaps even a love of sorts for the Jew. Who do you think this German officer is, after all?
Well, this was one of the big dilemmas of me directing this film and talking to the actor and rewriting the script. It was how sympathetic should I make an SS Hauptsturmführer in a concentration camp? You know, especially you know, because there's a line, and you know, here's what I did. You know, how I justified it. To myself, and I hope it works, is that I said up until now every Nazi in films, books, you know, in any kind of art form, documentaries even, where it was always shown as this kind of robotic killing machine, barking out orders, you know, pistol whipping victims, burning them with cigarettes, you know, all kinds of monstrous, horrific things. And that is the only aspect of this person, of these people, that we've seen. We really haven't seen them have soul-searching sessions. Really haven't seen them, we don't know if they have a mother, if they have a father, if they love their kids, if they, you know, I mean, if they're jealous of somebody. We haven't seen them in their work environment, you know, kind of an office politics environment. As you'll when you see the film, you'll understand that, you know. And so by showing them as, in a way, multidimensional, you know, I think it makes them more human, of course, which makes their acts more horrific, I think. Because you can always excuse an act of a rabid dog or a killing robot, you know, or an aliens that have come to destroy our planet. You can always say, well, that's what they do. You know, so, I mean, it's bad, of course, but that's what they do, and it has nothing to do with us as human beings. But having Koch and other people in the film, Nazis, have those elements of humanity, I think makes us look at ourselves and you know, and kind of think, would we be capable of that? You know, and even the Jews, you know, if it was flipped somehow, you know, and I think yes, you know, and that's what's I think that's what makes you think about this film, and that was one of the big motivations for me to do that. You know, and I think yes, because it's been proven. It's been proven in the Stanford experiment. It's been proven in the Milgram experiment. I mean, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
yes, no, I know exactly.
Yeah.
We've had films that have dealt with that in our Jewish Film Festival.
Yeah, and it's people who you would never expect, you know, college students and you know, just normal people who suddenly become manipulated, probably initially by someone, but then from within, because of their fears, prejudices, etc., you know, and they become monsters, you know, and so in a way, I'm not excusing, of course, the Nazis for what they did, nor condoning it, but I think it's just kind of a morality lesson for us all.
And of course, the Jew himself is incitement to murder. One of the characters is murdered on his instructions.
Exactly, and many because of his inactions, you know, as well, and that's the guilt that he carries. And also he's, you know, he's a victim, but he is, well, first of all, you know, it's interesting. I don't think he's a rabbi's son. First, I think he lied about that. Because if he was a rabbi's son, he would know Hebrew, and if he knew Hebrew, he would probably use Hebrew, you know, or partially use Hebrew in his language. because it could sound Farsi. So I think he's just one of these vagabonds, one of these like Charlie Chaplin little tricksters, little liars.
Yep.
That goes, yeah, that it's just a little survivor,
Yeah.
that inadvertently, completely inadvertently, builds a monument for 2,840 people, by his own survival. If this was a film about just one guy surviving and walking off down the railroad tracks, it'd be like, oh, good for him, right? He did. Too bad about all those other people, though, right? But he, in a way, and this is what's, I think, wonderful about this film, I really do, about the concept of this film, is that by his own survival, he builds a monument, he builds a memorial to all those people, makes them eternal. Their names, otherwise their names would have been burnt in that fireplace and burnt in the ovens at Auschwitz. And that's why he cries in that final scene. He cries because he realizes what he's done.
Yeah.
That's the only reason he cries, not because he purposely didn't feel for those people. He shut them down. He built like a wall. You can remember the scene. Can you please be quiet? Somebody's trying to sleep. That moment. Because of the guilt, he didn't. He says, "Well, at least it's not me," kind of thing. And then suddenly he realizes that he's God, what is the word? Someone who's been holy during the Holocaust. They give it to the people who saved people.
The righteous.
Yeah, there's a Hebrew word.
Yes.
But anyway, I think we all know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Well, this film was shown at the Berlin International Film Festival and elsewhere in Germany. What was the reaction there?
They loved it. They really did. I mean, there was a 15-minute standing ovation at the end of the screening, which was quite nice. And, they really liked it, I think.
There is an old Talmudic saying that to save one life is to save the world. And Klaus has saved one life. What does that say about him?
Well, because, it's funny because you introduced him as a murderous human being. I don't think he was murderous at all. I think Klaus is just, Klaus, he's not even anti-Semitic, to tell you the truth. He's an SS officer who's in charge of feeding other SS officers, and soldiers. He's in charge of the kitchen. But as Gilles so aptly says, he says, yeah, but you make sure that the murderers eat well, and he is. I mean, he's a violent person. He's a hateful person. He's neurotic as hell. But then again, as he says, remember the moment when he's drunk and he says, why did you join the party? When Gilles asks him, like, why did you become a Nazi? He says, well, I was walking down the street and I saw these guys on the corner. They were smoking and in their brown shirts, smoking and laughing. And so I went and joined them. That's basically, why he did it. So it's quite interesting because it's many people walk away from this film with a warm feeling for him in a very for his character in a very strange way. Especially after the airport scene, where brilliantly Lars Eidinger, the actor, he didn't play like, oh, I've been fooled, how dare he? He didn't play that. He didn't play it so broadly as a lesser actor would, but he played this incredible betrayal. He felt like his friend betrayed him. And he was right. He was betrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think the film has to teach us?
Well, what I said before is that we're all people, and whichever side we find ourselves on, the victim, or the aggressor, or the executioner, and we may find ourselves in our lives in both. I'm talking generally, in a very as a people, not as a person. We may find ourselves in both places. Is that we have to realize that we have to do that, and we also have to realize that I think it has to teach us that Holocaust did happen, that Holocaust was an incredibly horrific event in the history of the Jews, and that the more films we have about on that topic, the more good films we have on that topic, the better. The less chance there is that it'll happen again.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our Atlanta Jewish Film Festival this year, and this extraordinary film, Persian
Thank you.
Lessons. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.